Hello, good morning, good afternoon, or good evening, wherever you are on this beautiful planet of ours. Welcome to Sustainability in Your Ear. This is the podcast conversation about accelerating the transition to a sustainable carbon neutral society, and I'm your host, Mitch Ratcliffe. Thanks for joining the conversation today. As business comes to terms with the environmental damage it usually inflicts, more companies are turning to proven clean energy solutions that can lower costs and increase their resilience. In the food and beverage industry, where energy use touches every step in the value chain, solar energy offers an opportunity to turn sustainability into a strategic advantage. And today we're going to hear about that from two companies, REE Solar and Trinchero Family Estates. We'll talk about their collaboration to install solar to support one of the larger winery operations in the country. So we're going to meet James Presta, Business Development Manager at REC Solar, who's led solar installations for major food and beverage brands like Taylor Farms, Dole, and Firestone Walker Brewing. His perspective highlights how solar can cut operating costs, boost energy independence, and align with growing consumer demand for climate responsibility. Also, joining the conversation today is Mario Trinchero of Trinchero Family Estates. It's a family owned winery business based in Healdsburg, California, which partnered with REC Solar to integrate clean energy into its winemaking processes. The project reduced emissions while preserving the land and legacy that his family has built as a brand that's known across the country. We'll explore how solar is reshaping energy strategy in the food and beverage sector and what it takes to move from climate intention to climate impact. You can learn more about REC Solar's work at recsolar.com. That's all one word, no space, no dash, recsolar.com. And about Trinchero Family Estates at tfewines.com. Also, no space, no dash, tfewines.com. We're going to get to the conversation right after this brief commercial break. Welcome to the show, James and Mario. Could you take a moment to introduce yourself so folks can associate your voice with your identity? James?
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks for having me on here. My name is James Presta. I'm a business development manager here at REC Solar. REC Solar is an independent power producer providing PPAs to businesses across the US. I've been in the solar industry since 2011. It's really a passion of mine, focusing on what I call behind the meter solar and storage solutions, where we are helping businesses explore what solar and storage can do for their business and then go ahead and implement that system for them. So thanks again for having me.
And Mario, tell us about Trinchero Family Estates.
Hi, Mitch. Flattered to be here. I'm a third generation owner, family member of Trinchero Family Estates. We've been making wine here in the Napa Valley of California for 75 years. And as a family business, we're in it for the long haul. We're going to be here at least another 75 years if I have something to say about it.
One of your primary labels is Sutter Home. And what else would we associate with Trinchero Family Estates?
Oh gosh, we've got something like 50 brands out there.
Okay.
We do a lot of partnerships with major retailers like Target. Sometimes it's small short-term projects. You may remember Duck Commander at Walmart for a little while when Duck Dynasty had its moment in the sunlight. That was us. We are associated with, Menage a Trois is a big one. Joel Gott Wines is another big one that is a good business partnership with us. Tres Agaves Tequila is another big one
Really?
for us. Yeah, and the Tres Agaves organic mixers as well.
Well, thank you for sharing that background. James, I want to start off by asking what REC Solar is seeing in terms of shifts in the food and beverage sector toward solar over the past 5 or so years. There's been a lot of activity. The prices have fallen. What's going on in that industry?
Yeah, yeah, no, it's a great question. I'd say, we have seen, really the last 5 years, we have seen that industry looking into solar more so than they had previously. And I think a few of the reasons that is there is, as solar continues to be deployed, number one, it helps kind of bring that cost curve down, just continuing to gain efficiencies in the supply chain of solar. So the more it's deployed, generally the lower its cost is. And then the more and more folks and businesses start seeing their friend, their neighbor, their competitor installing solar and starting to see some of the success stories, hopefully like a little bit like we're talking about today, it really encourages them to go and take a look. And what we have found is generally, especially for customers with multiple sites, generally once they've taken a look and deployed solar, it's successful more often than not, and they are going to then go and look to go ahead and deploy it at another site. So we've seen it continue to grow and really get a lot more interest from folks looking at scope 1, 2, and even scope 3 emission reductions.
I'm curious, has the tone of the national dialogue about renewables since the election changed any of these sentiments in the industry?
Yeah, no, it's a good question. I mean, I got into solar back in 2011, and since that first year, I have seen, people's urgency continue to grow over time. I'd say regardless of election results, businesses are drawn to solar because of the benefit it can provide. It can lower your emissions, it can lower your cost of power, it can give you a little bit more control over what your cost of power is. So I don't see the demand for renewables slowing down soon, kind of irregardless of the election results today. Solar is a proven, cost-effective source of energy.
Well, that's good to hear. It's a relief that the political debate isn't changing the direction of the industry as much as we sometimes fear. What are the typical pain points in the food and beverage industry, which involves a lot of refrigeration in particular, that REC Solar is finding applications that reduce costs and improve reliability?
Yeah. Yeah, I would say, number one, for many of the folks, especially the manufacturers in the food and beverage space, energy is one of the largest costs, one of their largest operating costs that they have. And most of these businesses focus on their operations. They're experts at what they do. They've been refining it for a number of years. Solar is not what they're good, where their expertise lies.
Mm-hmm.
So they're generally looking to find a way to reduce their greatest costs. If energy is one of the greatest costs, on-site solar is a pretty fantastic opportunity to lower that cost. So whether it's on a larger refrigeration load, whether it's maybe a seasonal process, the nice thing about solar is it ties directly into your infrastructure and your site's switchgear. So it can really offset power in real time, irregardless of the type of power it is, whether it's a refrigeration or a processing line.
Now, Mario, you've partnered with REC Solar at Trinchero Family Estates to install a lot of solar power. I'm curious, what first drove you to make the decision? Was it a sustainability goal, operational goals, just to lower your costs? Were you hearing from consumers? What was the driver of the decision?
Well, that starts with our general family values and our core business philosophy around sustainability, which is not, it's about a variety of things. It's about responsibility and nurturing a future for our family, for the family of our employees, for the families of the community at large, doing so in the long term. And to do that in the long term, you have to pay attention to the cost, because if the business goes under, well, that's not long term.
Mm-hmm.
So it starts with the values, but yes, the business decision is made based on cost.
Now, you entered into a power purchase agreement, and that defrays the upfront capital costs that you would pay to install the solar yourself. Was that the most attractive offer you saw, and how has it worked out for you in terms of return on that investment, which apparently wasn't very high to begin with?
The power purchase agreement was definitely the way to go. We by going that route, we sidestep the capital investment requirement, which was always a big hurdle, and then we start collecting on that investment in a positive way the moment that array goes live. So that's very attractive from a cash flow perspective. And the other nice thing is, like James said, we make wine.
Mm-hmm.
We don't maintain inverters. We don't clean panels. It's not our expertise. So to have somebody who is an expert in that, taking care of that system and making sure it's always operating, we're always getting good, clean energy out of it, that is very, very attractive.
Now, talk a little about the array that you have, or actually arrays. You've got your office in St. Helena where you are, and there are other production facilities in the Napa and Central Coast areas. Are these rooftop? Are they ground-based panels? How are they deployed?
We've got a little bit of everything. Down on the Central Coast, roof structure was capable of holding an array, so it's pretty much all rooftop solar there. Also, lots of sunlight down there, so we were able to almost completely offset our energy down there. At our West Side facility, the roofs were a bit tall. It made maintaining them difficult, but we did have a large space available for a ground mount array. And so that array went in like that. And then here at Main Street, unfortunately, most of our buildings were so old that the roofs weren't structurally capable of having a rooftop array. But we did have a lot of parking lot area that frankly needed shade. It gets hot here in the summer. When our employees are out working in the heat, they don't have to get into a car that's been cooking under the sun all day. So there was some side benefits to that. But yeah, a little bit of everything.
And James, do you find that that's true generally, that the companies you work with have a very diverse configuration of solar?
I like to say, each project can be a bit of a snowflake. So you're looking at different operating profiles, different building structures. Sometimes it's one building, sometimes a customer has purchased multiple parcels over the years. So absolutely, it's a bit of finding the best solution for each site.
Now, when you're considering going into business with somebody through a PPA, because you've installed your facilities on their locations, what kind of criteria do you look for in customers before you consider a relationship?
So generally, we are installing the PV system and providing a power purchase agreement over 15 to 25 years. So what we're generally looking for with a business, with a customer of ours, is longevity. That they've been there, they've been operating for a while. They've got a firm business that's set for the next 15 to 25 years. So we worked with really a gamut of customers across the U.S., big and small. But yeah, generally we're looking for folks with a good, strong, healthy business.
And Mario, I mean, it's not like it's that much different than plugging into the grid, but was it a potentially challenging decision to partner with somebody who would have their infrastructure embedded in your business?
For me, no. If we were worried about, say, whether or not we wanted to walk away from a site within a few years, it would
Mhm.
have been a more difficult decision. But as I said before, we're in this thing for the long haul. The facilities that we chose are facilities that we've occupied for a very long time. In fact, here in St. Helena and in our Lodi facility, those were, let's see, Main Street we acquired in 1993 and moved in, and we've been here ever since and grown it in leaps and bounds. Um, Lodi was purchased shortly thereafter, and we built that thing basically from the ground up. And we're not planning on walking away from that thing anytime soon. And then TCC we picked up in 2018 to support our Central Coast programs, and that thing has been a workhorse ever since, and we have no intention of letting it go. So really, it's facilities that we know we're going to be there in the long haul. It's not a difficult decision at all.
So, what were the measurable outcomes in terms of emissions reductions? I know you have goals to reduce to 50% by 50% by 2030 and net zero in the future. Did you achieve energy independence? Tell us about the outcome after you've put this into production.
Yeah, you're right. We do have these goals of reducing our emissions by half by 2030, and the net zero goal is 2045. Prior to that, we were a Marin Clean Energy, MCE for short, deep green customer. So in theory, we were purchasing clean energy from the grid prior to that, albeit at the PG&E delivered price, which is nowhere near as attractive as the PPA. The price of the power purchase agreement from on-site generation was very beneficial compared to the Marin Clean Energy price that we were getting through PG&E. That said, I mean, given the constraints of each site, we weren't capable of achieving full energy independence from the grid. We're down to 13% PG&E reliance from the grid, which I mean, when only 13% of your power is at the mercy of PG&E and the rest is a nice PPA that you've locked in for, gosh, I forget how many years was it, James? Was it 25 years? The bottom line is being able to insulate yourself from those increases for a long time is incredibly attractive.
James, would you say that's also characteristic of your customers in general? What are the motivations that bring them to you?
Yeah, yeah, I would say I agree with what Mario just said there. It's generally being able to lock in a known rate of power for a long period of time. These power purchase agreements standard are generally 15 to 20, 25 years. When a customer is interested in exploring it, its cost is number one. How can I help improve our bottom line? And then right behind it is typically sustainability or carbon reduction. Many organizations have public facing goals similar to Mario and Trinchero family estates here, and they need to make actions on those goals. So it's a triple bottom line, right? You can save money, you can lower your carbon, and then you can actually have more control on that cost. Here in California, we're paying quite a bit more for our energy today than 5 years ago, 10, 15 years ago. And as Mario said, you lock in a set rate for a long period of time, gives you a lot more comfort in those operational expenses.
A very practical answer. I want to take a quick commercial break. We're going to be right back to continue the discussion. And let's get back to the conversation with James Presta. He's Business Development Manager at REC Solar and one of REC Solar's key partners, Mario Trinchero of the Trinchero family estates. Mario, you sell wine, and wine is a product that comes with a story. How are you communicating to your direct customers, the retailers, the people who are considering doing a private label brand with you too, your sustainability goals and the impacts that you're having both in your community and for the planet?
Well, we highlight our renewable energy metrics alongside our certifications in sustainability, water, and waste management to ensure that our customers know it's a long-term commitment for Trinchero and the brands in our portfolio. We also explore how packaging innovation like lighter bottles, eco-friendly materials, recyclable materials complements our renewable energy efforts. These initiatives are starting to gain more traction with customers and consumers in the market. Some of those customers come to us explicitly asking for something they can market like this. We do our best to accommodate that.
Do you find that you need that kind of message on the bottle itself, on the label? Does it need to tell the story of sustainability for it to be attractive to consumers these days?
I would say that's very brand reliant. I'm
Hmm.
not a marketing expert, more of an engineer. I could wax for hours on all the different ways I want to make refrigeration more efficient. The marketing piece, what I can say, it's very brand reliant. It depends on what consumer is being targeted with that brand. For some, yeah, they absolutely want to see it. Lord knows I've seen plenty of marketing data that indicates that especially younger generations are very, very sensitive to that message. They want to know that this brand that they are supporting and putting their money towards is going to be a key part of their future in the
Mhm.
world.
James, do you find that your customers are looking for disclosures about their power use and the decreased carbon impact of their power use as part of their messaging generally?
Yeah, I'd say I do. I find it really interesting that consumers are starting to take, and exciting that they're starting to take maybe a closer view on some of the products they're buying. And absolutely, oftentimes when we are working with a business, they would like to understand the carbon reduction that is coming from their PV systems, from their solar system. So oftentimes it can depend on kind of where you are in the country. Our grid, certain areas of the grid are cleaner than other areas of the grid. So overlaying PV, overlaying solar onto your facility in a state that's maybe utilizing a lot of coal will actually even show a greater carbon offset than maybe a grid like California that, while it's still using a lot of fossil fuels, luckily has started to adopt more and more solar into the mix.
Is a component of the of your platform a reporting mechanism so that companies can integrate this information easily?
Yeah, so all of our systems, we're tracking the energy in real time. So you're able to go ahead and pull that report, whether it be monthly or yearly, and directly take that production. And then generally we would apply it in an online tool, like an EPA approved tool, where you can overlay exactly how much energy you have consumed from solar, and it'll tell you how much carbon it has offset specific to your location.
And as you mentioned, that varies from state to state or even from municipality to municipality based on how they generate their electricity. Do you see, as you look across the country, adoption, particularly in the East Coast, where there's a lot of fossil fuels being burned to generate electricity?
Yeah, we are seeing more and more customers looking at maybe like or utilities looking at like a community solar program. So here at REC, we're an IPP, an independent power producer. My focus is working with folks like Mario and deploying behind the meter solutions, but we also have a small utility scale team that's out there focused on generally 75 megawatts and under, and potentially being able to deploy, whether it's a municipality or even tying into a larger utility. So solar right now is the lowest cost of power that can be deployed in the US. So we are seeing greater interest, really across the majority of the states right now.
Now, we were talking earlier about the cold chain, the refrigeration network that you have to have in place in order to move food and beverages around. One of the obvious gaps in our EV infrastructure is charging stations. Have you thought about how REC might participate in filling some of those gaps, particularly for commercial customers like in the food and beverage industry?
Yeah, with the focus being behind the meter, we do certainly run into customers who are looking at adopting EV, whether that's from a car charger standpoint for their employees, or at these larger shipping facilities, actually oftentimes electrifying their yard equipment first, and then potentially looking into like a Class 8 truck. So we have certainly seen that. If you're installing a PV system, installing some chargers along with it is a good time to do so, as you're starting to tap into your electrical infrastructure. And we have started to see that a little bit more and more, especially in Southern California. There's a program called the WARE program that is actually incentivizing customers through a carrot and a stick to add solar and EV charging.
So Mario, as you listen to what we were just talking about, what kinds of further aspirations do you have for the deployment of solar, or let's say renewably generated energy within your infrastructure?
Oh boy, this was the question where I could probably go on for hours, but I'm going to try to keep this, because this is a very near and dear subject to my heart.
Well, you're an engineer.
Right, exactly. I'm always thinking about this. Well, let's start at the top of the supply, at the very top. Let's start in the vineyards. For instance, a lot of vineyards are remote. Some of them do not have utility access. Some of those places need irrigation pumps. Well, how do you get an irrigation pump out in the middle of nowhere? It tends to be a diesel pump. So right there, if there's available area where you can consume some sunlight that the vines aren't using to run your irrigation pump, phenomenal. That's an immediate, fossil fuel burning offset. And oftentimes it's going to be lower maintenance because you don't have to go out and refuel it. So that's a big opportunity. There's also opportunities. Monarch's the hot brand, but there's a few others out there that are producing electrified automated tractors. So if you have the ability to charge a tractor on site to do your vineyard work, okay, phenomenal. That's even less diesel you're using. Then we move into the wineries. That's where I'm at. This is what the array that we were just talking about, they benefit from it, period. Being able to offset that PG&E footprint is phenomenal. It is kind of a case-by-case basis. Like I said, sometimes the rooftops can handle it. Sometimes the siding isn't ideal. Sometimes you got to go with carports. And in my opinion, never able to build enough, but get as much as you can. And I will say, especially what we noticed here at Main Street, shade is big. Every year keeps getting hotter, as we know, and people are working outside. The more shade you can give them, the better they can work, the safer they can work. That's a lot of ancillary benefits just from the generative shade, just from getting the shade. Off harvest, this is where it starts to get a little tricky. Wineries have a very bell-shaped power profile when you look at the year, where it tends to be fairly low between November and August, and then September, October, those tend to be very, very power intensive months.
Sure, you're doing the squeeze then.
Right. When you're building an array to help offset that, you end up with a lot of unused power in the off season. So that's where, James was mentioning the batteries can come in really handy, where you can start load shaping to where, you can keep those batteries charged up and then deplete overnight to stay off the grid overnight. There's a lot of fancy, cool things that you can do with that. And then a lot of the other things I can think of, warehousing, especially cold warehousing, and especially if the roofs can handle a rooftop array. We actually did this at our Green Island Road facility, where we did a large, substantial rooftop array because we had indoor bottling lines. Bottling lines take power. There's lots of motors. There's compressed air that takes a lot of power. So there's a lot of opportunity for solar there. Not to mention, if it's a rooftop load, you're kind of shading your roof, you're reducing your refrigeration load a little bit too. So it's a nice double win. Same thing with barrel rooms, which are typically more refrigeration oriented because you got to keep the barrels cool, and barrels don't have refrigerated jackets. They're wood.
Yeah.
So got to keep the room cool. And then, of course, distribution warehouses, a lot of it's the warehousing towards the end. And of course, when you finally get to the retailer, when it's there in a grocery shelf, well, there's a lot of refrigeration in grocery stores. If you have a lot of solar on grocery stores, then you could be offsetting that load too. So the bottom line is that the sky's kind of the limit, and our imaginations are the limit.
So, James, as you listen to the fancy, cool things that Mario was just describing, where is REC seeing some of its greatest opportunity in the coming years, particularly in the cold chain?
I would say we've seen the cold chain expanding with our existing customer base and with folks that we're actively soliciting for new business. So I would say we do see the growth of the cold chain being really ideal for solar. Generally, these are larger facilities. A lot of times, if they're newer facilities, as Mario was hitting on, they can be engineered to handle a very large scale, multi-megawatt solar array. So we certainly see that as a use case that works very, very well for on-site solar.
It's going to be a hotter world too, and air conditioning is going to be in demand across all of our lives. How does REC see potential partnerships with building management companies as another extension of its partnerships?
We've worked with building owners to explore, even like shopping malls, to explore the benefits that solar can provide. And like Mario said, it's oftentimes a mix of deployment types, whether it's rooftop, whether it's canopy. So really for the building management teams, they can see it as a way to attract more folks to that building. Generally, we are contracting with the end user for the most part. But there's certainly growth. Again, as I think I hit on before, the cost curve for solar goes down, and the more and more folks are looking into it, they get success in one area, and they generally want to look and how can they kind of double down on that success on other properties.
You've both been very generous with your time. I want to just ask one more question, and can you put your futurist hats on for me and talk a little about where you see renewables in your industry 10 years from now? Are we going to be well over the hump in terms of adoption? And will the United States be on track, do you think, to a net zero potential? Whether we get there to be determined. James, what do you think?
It's an interesting question. I think what I'm seeing right now in our industry is a lot of electrification growth. So that's coming from EVs, again, across the gamut of individuals at our homes and larger scale deployments across businesses, and whether that's electric forklifts, yard trucks, Class 8 trucks, and this greater AI movement, right? These data centers are consuming huge amounts of energy, and AI is actually involves more energy than a standard data center would typically use. So I see the adoption of solar continuing to grow there and fill in the need for this extra electricity as the US and a lot of the world is looking to move away from fossil fuels and into electricity. So I certainly hope that and I'm optimistic that the adoption is going to continue. And I see a long road ahead of fulfilling these continued electrification growths.
Following up on AI, do you see AI as a component in reducing the load as well? Can we use it to manage and optimize the grid?
Oh, that's for folks maybe like Mario with the engineering brain that I don't have. But yeah, I would say certainly optimizing how energy is used is going to be really beneficial in reducing the amount of energy that is needed to supply the load. So yeah, I'm optimistic that it's going to help as well in better kind of load management.
So, Mario, you've got the 2045 net zero goal. How do you feel that the infrastructure will support your progress toward that goal?
The beautiful thing about solar and about batteries is that it is a technology. It is not a finite resource like fossil fuels, which means there will be opportunities to refine it. Take, for instance, the transistor. The first transistor was the size of my fist and cost several $100s. Now there's literal billions of them on a $100 microchip. That's where I see it going. More maturation of the technology, because there is no way to reach net zero without this, in my opinion. Maybe somebody experimenting with some crazy sci-fi stuff might contradict that, but the sun's the greatest source of energy in our solar system, not just the planet. If we have a carbon neutral means of capturing that energy, the more bountiful and the cheaper energy is, the more you can do. It's not just imperative to our green goals, it's imperative to our species. That's kind of where I'm going with it.
I wholeheartedly agree. Tell us how we can keep track of what Trinchero Family Estates is doing.
We do try to keep our website somewhat updated. Well, the last update took a little while, but they did just roll it out this week, so it looks nice. Go ahead and check it out. It's tfewines.com. We do have our sustainability goals outlined there and some of the ways we plan on reaching it.
Fantastic. And James, how can folks get in touch and talk with you?
Yeah, absolutely. So our website is a great place to go, recsolar.com. You can learn a lot about our history and our background. And there's a lot of fun case studies on there from a lot of the different verticals. So to certainly encourage folks to kind of go in and take a look. And if you're interested, go ahead and enter your information in, and a friendly REC Solar colleague will give you a ring.
Well, thank you. And thank you both for your time today. It's been a really interesting conversation.
Same to you. Thanks, Mitch.
Thank you much, Mitch. Flattered to be here.
You've been listening to my conversation with James Presta, Business Development Manager at REC Solar, and Mario Trinchero of the Trinchero Family Estates, the winery behind Sutter Home, Joel Gott, Menage a Trois, and other well-known labels. And as you heard, you can learn more about them at recsolar.com. That's all one word, no space, no dash, and tfewines.com. Also, no spaces, no dashes, tfewines.com. You know, a new modular and distributed electric grid is emerging, one installation and power purchase agreement at a time. These steps by individual companies and homes that begin to interconnect their renewable energy generation capacity will eventually ladder up to produce a resilient infrastructure that can heat, cool, and provide the electricity for everyday business and our lives. But of course, we cannot get there fast enough to avoid the worst impacts of climate change. Yet these pools of solar, wind, and geothermal energy generation will provide more flexibility to respond to rising temperatures in homes and companies that invest now. We're pioneering a sustainable carbon neutral society from within the industrial infrastructure, and one that is fighting back. And as Mario Trinchero suggested, companies are eager to put this clean tech to use. The power purchase agreement is an interesting variation on the rural electrification programs that brought the grid to farms and businesses during the 1930s. Then it was the Rural Electrification Administration, a government agency that installed the connection to a home or a farm or a business. But today it's frequently a private company like REC Solar. So with a PPA, you're entering into a long-term agreement, and you need to be sure that there's a rock-solid contract in place that sets a long-term price per kilowatt hour generated, like we heard in this conversation, as well as clear terms for price changes, the duration of the contract, maintenance of the generation infrastructure, and a termination clause. Most importantly, take the time to understand the provider's financial stability and their roadmap. If they plan to sell out in the future, you need to know your options should the acquirer seek to change the terms of the agreement. With a solid PPA, as Mario said, you can begin to dream big about the potential to cut fossil fuel generated electricity out of your power supply and explore electric innovations that can be put in place across your supply chain, places where that was never possible before. The cost of energy will only continue to fall as solar, the cheapest form of energy in history, propagates across our society. We will be able to put power to work where wires have never reached, free from running diesel or propane generators in remote locations. In fact, we may be headed for an energy glut, according to the Rocky Mountain Institute's Amory Levins, who projected in a recent white paper that the nation risks a 12-fold energy overbuild due to overestimating the future energy demand of data centers. So what are we going to do with all that energy if we get there? The sky's the limit, without the negative impacts that the 20th century power infrastructure brought with it. We'll stay tuned to this story. It's going to continue to be an interesting one and will evolve a lot over the coming years. And I hope you'll take a moment to share this or any of the more than 500 episodes of Sustainability in Your Ear that are available for you to share with your friends. Writing a review on your favorite podcast platform will help your neighbors find us. You folks are the amplifiers that spread more ideas to create less waste. So please tell your friends, family, your coworkers, the people you meet on the street that they can find Sustainability in Your Ear on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, iHeartRadio, Audible, or any other purveyor of podcast goodness that they prefer. Thank you, folks, for your support. I'm Mitch Ratcliffe. This is Sustainability in Your Ear, and we will be back with another innovator interview soon. In the meantime, take care of yourself, take care of one another, and let's all take care of this beautiful planet of ours. Have a green day.